guys, how's it going? This is part of the COMV crew. Unfortunately, we couldn't fit the whole entire crew here in our equipment room, but that'd be pretty cool. It would be very, very packed solid.
One day.
There'd be a lot of people in here.
So, why don't you guys start by introducing yourselves, and then we'll hop right into some of the questions that were left on the video by some of our European followers, since they're probably sleeping right now. And then we'll go with some of the live questions as they start coming in.
All right, I'm Andrew, writer for the company, and I am the real Andrew. There's only one.
I am Andrew. I am the director of photography, and I am the real Andrew.
And my name is Andrew, and
Get him!
so my name is Weston Childers. I'm the originally the owner of COMV Productions and also the director for the feature film Navigator.
Now, one thing that you guys can't see from where you are, because technology hasn't adapted yet, like, it's been a long day for us. We've all got our shoes off, so there's a smell. You know?
A real
So,
musk.
Yeah,
Not bad per se.
Yeah, it's a musk is the best way to describe it.
Strong.
But like, olfactory was my strongest sense. So like, I'm just going crazy in here right now. Just wanted you guys to feel what we're feeling. You know, this is real.
Yeah.
This is the real thing.
And since we're all kind of volunteering our time to try to move Navigator forward, for the most part, everybody in the company has taken on different areas of employment to be able to continue moving forward. Some related to passions, some not so related to passions.
That's how you can tell.
Passionless.
That's how you can tell the real Andrew. All right, the real Andrew passion. There's not a real rivalry here. We're just playing. Or maybe.
Okay, Andrew, do you want to start out a little bit kind of talking about your journey of getting into Navigator, and then we'll go into some of the questions.
Well, my journey. Well, the first thing that comes to mind is journey, specifically Don't Stop Believin', but that has nothing to do with this.
A little bit.
So I've got to get past that in my mind right now to get to my actual journey. But something I don't know if that's, I can't remember all the things we've done, but I have dyslexia, which is a reading disability, so to speak, best way to describe it. And so reading and interpreting information was not easy for me. It wasn't natural. It took a lot of work. And because of my strong desire to tell stories, I have worked through that to become a better storyteller and to be able to use my my talent of dyslexia to change the way that I interpret information, to see the big picture and deliver that to audiences. So that's something that's cool about me, and that's the main crux of my journey is to stick it to the man. You know, all those people and teachers who are like, oh, you'll never succeed because you can't read. Well, look at me now. What do you got to say about that, huh? I bet you never made no movies before, huh? That's right. It's okay. It's okay. You don't, no. You calm down. It's all right. I forgive you.
And Drew, could you tell us a little bit about how you came to be a part of COMV and your journey in Navigator?
Okay, so I came into COMV because I was a bass player in a rock and roll band that happened to play in the garage just out here, and I got connected to the right people, started doing color correction and audio, and kind of made my way into cinematography that way. So,
Yeah, because at the time I was shooting and directing, and Drew would get some of my footage. And tell us, what was your thought behind that?
so I realized real quick that if I got bad footage, I had a really hard time doing any sort of color correction, and realized that I needed to be on set making sure it got done right, or else I would get just stuff that was all over the place.
So yeah, so then he can't blame me anymore.
Well, we still can.
Yeah,
It's just,
for different things, right?
why is my sandwich cold?
We had a question left for us a few weeks ago when we first announced the Ask Us Anything by Rice Woods. He said that it would be 4 o'clock a.m. in the UK, and so he wasn't able to wake up, although we have a few people who woke up at 3 a.m. to come join us, so thank you guys for joining us. And he asks, he says, I'm a 13-year-old and I'd love to be a filmmaker and operate camera equipment. The one issue I have is that I find myself not making movies because my Canon an older model, SX610HS, has so much grain and noise. Any tips or advice?
Any tips, man? This is a you question.
I don't know. You start throwing the camera numbers at me, and I really honestly don't know what you're talking about. But I'd say don't worry about it. You got to start somewhere. You got to start with what you have, and that's what we did here at COMV. We started with these older Sonys that, and I think we pushed them as hard as we could. And but at the end of the day, it's not going to matter so much as how good is your story. If you can come up with a good story, and you can find a creative way to present it, I don't think it's going to matter what your noise is like, grain. I mean, you're going to get those film people that are always going to be like that are going to
critique you to death.
Critique it like, but I just think some of that stuff is so dumb to critique it from that angle.
Yeah.
Something came to my mind. I mean, I don't know I don't know much about technical stuffs, but you can tell a story without having to use sound. Like if that microphone on that camera is the only one you have, you can work around those limitations. Like even with what we're doing now, there are certain limitations that we are hit with. You know, we don't have a big budget. We're doing this in our spare time. So it's like, well, what can we do to work with what we have to give the best product? So there's nothing wrong with a silent film. And in fact, that might even be an excellent way to get a start into what you're doing. Like just throw a black and white filter over it, put in some music, you know, piano. If all else fails, some pictures of Andy from Andy Warhol.
Yeah.
You know,
And I love what Drew said about, you know, we pushed those Sony cameras as far as we could. And one thing that we learned is shoot to what you have available. I think a lot of times it's an issue, especially like when it's writing. It's like, you know, oh, and then we have a jet fly over and we have these big, you know, $1 million ideas, but we can't execute them without them being cheesy. And so a big part of it is to be able to say, okay, my camera, in this case, doesn't shoot good low light. Okay, so then I avoid shooting night scenes, or I find a way to light my night scenes very noir-like so that I can use that to my advantage. So really, it's just trying to take what you have available and not make excuses for ourselves, really, and say, okay, I'm not going to shoot night scenes, but I can write my whole script during the day.
Yeah.
Or, you know, I have this movie that's all at night, so I'll wait. I'll put it off until, you know, I'll do some stuff now and I'll put it off until I can buy, you know, an A7S or something like that.
Building on what
it in the day and then color correct it
to look like the night. Yeah. And something else that from what you just mentioned on there, like if there's a crackly poppy sound in the microphone that you're using, you can work with that. Like with the film noir idea, oh, that would sound gorgeous. If you had the crackly poppy just throughout the whole film, and it's just the whole thing of, you know, like the guy's there and he's, you know, like looking into the light and like he punches the glass or whatever, you know, the whole noir thing with the crackly poppy sound. That would be really cool.
He's giving you a story.
That would be really cool right there, you know.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I mean, there's a lot of crappy Hollywood films. They have a lot of money. They have every piece of equipment you could possibly imagine, and they're still crappy. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we have another one from a follower who's been with us almost since the beginning, Spaceway Films. And he says, how do you create visual effects for films such as the one you're making right now? So I think kind of at first, not having a computer graphics team on board within COMV, we could do some limited stuff, but nothing too complex. We said, okay, one, Andrew wrote a story that allowed us to use practical effects to really the whole movie can be done practically with very limited special effects. And so again, it was kind of working to that level. Kind of fortunately, as we kind of started sharing our vision and stuff, we had a company contact us from London who wanted to help us out with it. And now, you know, now we have a CG team, which is awesome. But kind of going through the script, it's like, oh, we plan to have everything practical, and we still can do it practically now. We can just enhance it with computer graphics, so we don't get rid of that.
Yeah, it'll make what we do have even more beautiful. And for some parts that were going to be a little harder, we can clean up the edges. Excuse me, I just burped a little. I don't know how long this has been broadcasting, but Drew and I were having an in-depth conversation about how humans have like gurgliness. So now you know we're real. You know, we're not synthetic people here. It's the real deal.
Yeah.
I'm liable to do that again before this is over. So.
Or maybe you're faking it to say Maybe you're trying to
You know
disguise
too
the fact
much!
that you're not real.
Any thoughts on your side about computer graphics?
No, I mean, I think you guys hit it up pretty good. It's just, I think from the beginning we wanted to capture everything we could in camera, and only do CGI or anything like that as much, only if we really had to. And I think that's what's gonna make any good filmmaker does that. Too much CGI is just that too much. And if we can use it as minimally as possible, that would be the best.
Yeah.
Like, we have this one scene where we're just going to use buckets and buckets and buckets of just viscera, and the CG is going to help with that. Right?
I don't know what you're talking about. I can't.
But yeah, so it's kind of, I think, wrapping up the question, we were fortunate to have a shout out to Tempered Pixel, who's the company who offered to help us from London. As huge of a blessing that is, it was kind of we weren't waiting, or the movie wasn't hinged around finding an effects team. So it's kind of that same concept of go towards what you have available to you, and don't wait around for, a miracle to happen or for an angel investor to throw you a few $1 million, because it never happens until you start moving forward.
I heard a quote recently. It said something like, it was for writers. If you're not willing to start writing something that's bad, you'll never write anything that's good.
Yeah,
It's true.
Yep. Amen. So we just got a question in from Jacob Hartel, I think, or Jacob Hartel, depending on what part you're from. Jacob woke up at 3 o'clock a.m. in the UK to come join us, and so thank you for joining us. And he asks, do you guys need some composed music just for filming, or I just got into filmmaking half a year ago. So in answer for that, again, kind of developing a team as we've gone, we've been fortunate enough to find Levi Connor, who's our composer. And we go to him for all the stuff, and then on occasion Jacob Connor, one of our writers, and Drew, who acts as a bass player sometimes, will help compose music kind of as a group. So we kind of all along, it was the idea of how do we, we can't really go forward with it unless we have these specific pieces, and so that was one of the pieces that we definitely try to find. And Levi's just been amazing. We'd still love to talk with you, Jacob, and see, if we can collaborate on some things, but for the most part, we go to Levi for everything just because we work really well together. Yeah. Some thoughts on Levi as a composer and what's been beneficial about that relationship?
I think he's an excellent, perfect composer. He really fits with the projects that we do. He provides exactly what we're looking for. He even exceeds that often. Like, you'll come to him with an idea and then provides us with something that we weren't expecting that fits even better with what we were making. And I like that.
That's a big one. So we had worked on a project called Used. It was a short film. And I had this idea of this, wonderful score in my mind. I edited it together and sent it off to Levi, and I've learned not to send Levi temp music because I don't want to taint him with kind of my perception as a director. And every single time I do this, he sends me back a piece that I hate. And it's just like, Levi, why? Why did you compose this? And then as I listen to it again and again and again and get rid of the idea that I had pre-composed in my mind, I always realize it is so much better than what I had envisioned. And so I think that's, a thing to really, for all of you guys as aspiring filmmakers, find people you can trust, be it, in cinematography, be it in writing, be it in music. Find people that you can trust and that you can let go and let them do their thing. And, the collaboration between it will always make, such a better result. Did you have any thoughts about?
I like Levi because he's opinionated, and I like people like that who know what they like. They know what they don't like. I always find that's a much better way to create any good art. You have to realize that there is such thing as bad art, and not make that. Too many people are like, "Oh, that's great," no matter what it is. But Levi's not like that, and I think it's smart for us to leave him to his ideas, and it's been rare, having a hard time thinking of any time that Levi was wrong when it came to anything. So yeah.
Levi's kind of like the secret father of the company. He's the older one of the group and has a lot of wisdom. But we encourage you guys to go check any of our videos. I'm pretty sure most of the ones that we have up right now all have Levi's music in it. And most of them have download links to where you can purchase music from iTunes. Also, you can go to iTunes and just search Levi Connor. He has a ton of awesome instrumental music that he's done for us. But also, you know, he was in a rock band in New York for a while, has some of that music up there, has a bunch of his own kind of solo EP albums, which are just phenomenal. I encourage you guys to go out there, support him, buy some of his music, and you may have, you know, then you get like that secret album or playlist where you're like, yeah, no one's ever heard of this guy. You know,
Right.
You'll be the ultimate hipster.
yeah, you'll hipster it up. So we have another question coming in from Tanner Gilman, who actually is acting as Boy in the movie. So Tanner, thanks for joining us.
Good to have you here, man.
Thanks for joining us in the movie as well as on the Ask Us Anything.
It's like you're in the room with us right now.
We can feel you. He asks, what is the most difficult part of building a realistic world in a script?
Ooh, the most difficult part? Is that the question? Whew. Honestly, the most difficult part about building a realistic world in a script, or anywhere, honestly, is getting yourself out of the way. Sometimes you sit there and you're like, okay, I want to tell this, but it isn't what you want so much. You come up with like the basic chrysalis of the idea. Like all of Navigator started with a very basic idea that I had in my mind of like just an icy plane, you know, with a guy walking on it. And I was like, well, where's he going? And it was like, okay, he's going here. And why is he going there? Well, he needs this. Well, what happens when he gets there? And then the whole thing grew from that moment. The environment came from that. And a lot of it is just getting yourself out of the way. You go off of what inspires you. You look into things that are interesting to you, and you build with that. But you don't try to force it. Really, is what I'm trying to say. You don't go in with like, okay, it has to have these components, because things change. You know, like there's no planet that's just one biome. You know, well, I guess Mars. Venus.
Maybe.
All right, but you know what I'm trying to say. A more interesting environment has a unique spread. You know, like Earth is not one thing. It's not all deciduous forest. It's got a lot of unique stuff to it. And that's kind of the idea. Just like what are you experiencing right then in that moment? What is important that they need to know? What does the audience need to understand when they read that moment? Do they need to know that it's hot? And how do you describe that? You just say that it's hot, or do you go like in most of the stories that I've written, if the area is hot, I never really use the word hot. I describe it through other things, like how there's no clouds in the sky, and that the dirt is really dry, and that everything's dusty, and there's lots of wind, and, you know, and they're sweating. You don't need to say the other things, just what are the people experiencing in the story. Then you as the reader will plug yourself into that moment and be like, if I'm experiencing these things, oh, that's uncomfortable. It must be hot. You fill in the rest of the blanks. If you overdo it for the audience, they lose a lot of interest. Like, go through and read some of your favorite books, and you'll see that. They don't drown you.
They don't spoon feed you.
They have to experience it for themselves.
Yeah. And kind of as a bad writer, so if you watch any of the, if you watch like Passage, which was a movie that I had written, and you can tell that I try to describe everything through dialogue because I had this preconceived idea of this is the message that I want to shove down your throat. And I think the fun part about being a bad writer and then working with such great writers is you get to realize what makes good writing. And really what I've realized is you take a story and you chop off the beginning and the end, and that makes your story compelling versus, spoon feeding those parts.
Yeah.
Then you leave it to their imagination.
Let them fill in the rest themselves.
Yeah.
For me, it's depth as well. I think one thing that Andrew here is so good at is creating a world, and creating a world quickly that is just full of stuff. And that's what makes it real for me, is just, maybe he did start with just the skeleton of a story, but then he filled that up with just stuff that I cannot even fathom where it comes from.
You gotta have the organs.
But then a lot of that never gets told to the audience directly again, because that's stuff that it fills in the little corners of every shot that we're going to do for Navigator. And even though the audience won't know 90% of that backstory, and I really don't want them to know, I don't want this to be like a Star Wars thing where they tell you every single little thing about every character and faction, but that's what gives it some real depth, you know?
Yeah, and Tanner's kind of follow-up question to that was really asking, how do you take those things, let's see here, and how does that complement or complicate the very brief section of the story that takes place in the bigger universe? And I think we kind of answer that. If that's kind of how you create a bigger universe, is those little details that you don't share but that are there. And then we can build it in. Jason, our miniatures guy and props guy, and Amy, Andrew's wife, also working on props, can put those little details into the costume, into the prop, and it makes it come to life. But we never talk about it.
Like with Harry Potter, like we know who his parents are, but we don't really know anything about them. We know very little about their lives, their exploits or experiences. We don't know anything about that. The author knew, but we don't, and that's okay. That's what made the world feel so normal, is because that information was in there. We just never get it because we don't need it. It's not important. It's not what you need to fill up the rest of the story.
Yeah. So we have another question coming in from Matthew McClure, and he says, what was the biggest obstacle you have faced so far in the making of this project? And how did you, as a team, overcome this problem? It's a good question.
Well, it's not a problem. Right down to the easiest shot that I dreamed up has been difficult. Just because in my head it's so simple. I just want a shot of his shoulder right here as he's walking, so we can kind of see his hand holding the rope and get some detail. And that has been one of the most difficult shots for us to try to get, because we have to move with him as he's trudging along, pulling a sled which we made way too heavy the first time we tried to shoot it. So it's just been, everything is difficult, and this job being in film is nothing but problem solving. Every single little thing we do.
Yeah.
That's kind of a key to art, I think. It's not meant to be easy. It's meant to be something that you struggle with. Even if the process of coming up with the idea was easy for you, you still struggle to get it made. It's not easy.
By the way, we've solved that problem though by just building a rig that, we stuck our big FS7 rig. It just hangs off Frank, and it is way too heavy, but it works. It looks great.
It helps that Frank can bench 470 pounds.
Yeah, we have about 15 seconds to set it up, hold it,
and go. We'll just you need to go slower.
But that's all we need. We need 3 seconds for the shot, right? So I think going along with Drew, yes, everything is always hard, right? And then just finding through preparation really is what I've learned, is the more you can prepare it and prepare it and prepare it and test and prepare it, you can solve all those problems before you get to where it matters, right? So then those problems are solved. We have the rig built. We know how much weight Frank can carry. We know how long we need to record that shot. We know what we need for the shot. We know where we need the lighting for the shot. We know who we need to be on set so that we can quickly set up that and take it down. And once you plan all those things together, that problem all of a sudden becomes not a problem. And we've solved, we've battled our way through it, and now we can get the shot. But even then, there's always some things that throw you for a twist. Like, for example, we tested the sled worked fine. Once you got at the salt flats, it didn't work fine, and it was horrible.
Turns out salt is a different consistency than dirt. we didn't think about that.
Well, I was watching the bonus features for La La Land, and they were talking about that opening dance sequence. For those of you who've seen La La Land, they have this big, huge opening dance sequence on the highway, and that's not a huge budget film, but still more than what we have. And they prepped and planned and had the choreography and everything down. And they got to the on ramp, and the whole thing slanted, and so they had to cut shots. They had to rework it because the whole thing was slanted. It's kind of like you don't think about that a lot of times. It's like you think about it, you see the ramp, but you don't think, oh, the fact that the whole thing's tilted is going to throw us off, or going to make it unsafe, or whatnot. So you just always have to be a problem solver.
Yeah.
My big thing is if I have a problem, I say something like, Weston will fix it. Weston will figure it out.
Yeah. I thank you for your confidence. And I tell myself,
Kyle will fix it.
Usually it's like, well, no one else can fix it, so I guess I'll do it.
Nina can edit it.
Nina can edit it.
Nina can fix it.
No, we don't do it in post. Okay, someone asked from our previous video, his name is, I'm probably going to slaughter this, so I apologize, Mahananda Narayankar. He says, can you show difference between real or fake fire setup? We can't really show it, but one of our previous behind the scenes, we were talking about how we made fake fire with some
flicker lights?
fluorescent starters to get the flicker. And we were kind of learning ourselves of what looked good like fire and what didn't. What was kind of some of the things that we learned?
I'm trying to remember now. We actually went to a bonfire, which helped us see actual fire. Was it? I think it went blacker, right? Or was it more random? Or
I think it was opposite. What I remember seeing was that there was a constant key, right?
Yeah.
That there was. We were kind of under the impression that it tucks away to black with the flicker.
It never goes full black.
Yeah, it never goes full black. So then now that comes down to a creative decision of the going to full black looks kind of cool, especially with Frank's beard and all the shadows and stuff. So we have to now make a creative decision of, do we make it 100% like real fire, or do we fake it and people still get the sense?
Consider like with Jurassic Park, you know, like the severed arm that fell onto the doctor.
Yeah.
The original one looked like a real severed arm. They had to like
and Spielberg was
gussy
like,
it a little bit so it looked more like film, you know, like film needs to be around, 90% accurate and leave the 10% for the art.
Yeah, that was interesting because the guy showed it to Spielberg and he's like, what is this? He's like, well, this is a severed arm. This is what it looks like picture by picture. He's like, well, it looks fake. Well, it's not fake. It's real. Well, it looks fake. So let's
make it look fake so it can feel real.
Yeah. Okay, so we have another question from J.E. Arellano. What is the number one thing you've learned through making Navigator?
Friendship through adversity.
Tenacity. I don't know, that's a hard question because we're still kind of going through it. So there's a lot we've learned. A lot. Any one thing. I think preparedness again is probably the number one thing we've learned. We kind of understood that. We were beginning to understand it as we were doing commercial and as we were doing bigger and bigger commercial projects that. In order to get these done within a month, 2 months, that we had to be really prepared. Here we've just learned that even more, especially on our beginning shoot day when everything just went wrong. And it's like, oh, we should have brought everything out to the salt. We should have gone, even though we were really prepared, we should have gone an extra step,
one more step
to be prepared. And so that's probably the number one thing. It's hard to do. It's probably my number one pet peeve about doing film is the prep stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's like 90% prep.
I just want to walk on the set, have all the stuff be up, and point my camera, and then leave. That's what I want to do. But
we'll get there.
It takes
should have been
so
an
much
actor.
more work. Yeah.
Which isn't true for our actors, but Andrew?
I mean, just something you don't really think about with like you think you want it to be perfect. You're putting this work into it, so it's supposed to be perfect. But what truly is perfect? How do you define that? The perfect is done. That's perfect. You get out there, you see what you can do, and you do your best with it. And as long as it didn't look horrible, as long as it looked good, then it is perfect. If it worked, it was perfect, and then it's more real.
Yeah, if the story's good enough, again, it'll carry through. I had to realize that this was not going to be perfect. Again, it was going to be kind of bad because it's our first. Bad's not the right word. I don't think it'll be bad. I think it will be good, and we'll be able to do better later. But if we got caught up in thinking it was going to be bad, we would have quit a long time ago.
Pull the plug. Yeah, and I kind of echo what Drew said, which is really planning. Like we just recently were wrapping up shooting for a commercial project for one of our clients. And I've been impressed to see how all the planning and preparation that we've done for Navigator taught me personally so much as a director how much, just really how, we thought planning was important, but as we plan more and more, we realized, oh wow, there's a whole new level of planning that we can take care of. And I know that we've still got more to learn about planning, but really that's been the biggest thing. And I know shooting short films, that was one of the things that, looking back on, I didn't do. I didn't pre-shoot my shots. I didn't even think about where the sun's going to be in position so that we can get good backlighting or any of that stuff. But now it doesn't take that long to plan for it, and the payoff is 10-20 fold better than what we could accomplish before just by taking a few minutes or an hour to plan stuff out. So yeah. Okay guys, we're going to take a small little break. We're going to go to a slate so that we can take a little break, adjust the cameras as we're losing a little bit of light. But just before we do that, I want to give a shout out to Matthew McClure, who had asked that previous question and is coming all the way from Scotland. which is awesome. We hope we can visit you there in Scotland.
One day.
We can do some. We can find a way to work in a scene. We can work in a scene in
We'll right
Scotland.
in there.
You guys got good caves in Scotland. We need caves.
Yeah. And then kind of going back to the fire question that was asked by Mahananda, we'll have some other bonus features that are going to show more of the process of us. The decision between do we go with the fake looking fire or the fire without the full key light or realistic fire, to kind of further answer that question for you. Okay, and we'll see you guys in probably about a minute, okay? Go get some drink.
Yeah.
Don't die of dehydration.
We'll be right back after these messages.
Okay, guys, we are back, and
Just like that Steven Spielberg movie.
Oh,
We're back.
Oh, yeah.
The animated dinosaurs.
I was like, wait, that wasn't Spielberg.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
though.
Yeah, that one, which is surprising because I remember like
He made Gremlins.
when I found it in the
Yeah.
when I found it in the $5 DVD bin in Walmart, I was like, oh, I love this movie as a child, and I was starting watching. I was like, Steven Spielberg? What? I didn't know this is by Spielberg.
He also did
That movie is the
American Tail.
king of random. Just like
American Tail.
out of nowhere, dinosaurs are just
Or-
eating hot dogs, and you're like, and then that's like
That hot
they just
dog
are
scene
so
always
normal.
makes me hungry.
Yeah, it makes you want a
always
hot
has.
dog.
But
So
it's a good movie. It's got a great message. I like it.
diabolical plot by Oscar Mayer.
Okay, so getting back into it, we have another question again from Mahananda Narayankar. And he asks, anamorphic lenses, are they important in film? Do we use it in our film?
I should know the answer to that question.
Now, I never read Animorphs. Everyone in my high school, they loved Animorphs. I never read it. I know that's.
Oh yeah.
I'm not-
no.
I know that's. I'm putting myself out there on that one.
I'm gonna say yes and no, depending on what you want to get.
That's really in the end. So we don't shoot with anamorphic lenses. We are going to be putting a little bit of an enhancement to one of our lenses to get kind of the light streaks, kind of the what do we call those? J.J. Abrams.
I think they're called lens flares.
Lens flares. Thank you. I don't know why I forgot that.
I think they're called fiddly bops.
So we're gonna do a little adjustment for lens flares, not for the whole movie, but for specifically with Man in Boots, just because it adds a little bit more roughness to the image to try to get across his character. So that was a creative choice that we're going to be making, but that's really it. I mean,
Yeah.
I think kind of as we said before, it's what you have. Yeah, some movies are shot with anamorphic lenses, some aren't. It's an aesthetic thing. So you choose what do you want for your film. What is motivated from the characters to get that
afford
look.
it?
Yeah, and can you afford it?
Buy one.
I mean, they just came out with they announced some new anamorphic lenses at NAB, and you can buy the set for $18,000, which is relatively inexpensive, but it's still pretty expensive.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
it's-
for lenses, that's decent.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great price for lenses, but, again, it's kind of the idea of, do you need it? No. Will it help with some aesthetics? Yeah. Will it look better than a $50 lens? Of course. But again, as we talked about before, it's the story in the end. Can you tell a good story? And so don't worry about the lenses.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on that one?
You can't compensate story with lens flare. It just doesn't work.
You worry about it. You gotta worry about it a little bit, and all that stuff. It is important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
But if
don't
that's
let
all
it
you're using,
overpower- Yeah. I mean, don't if you don't have it, don't worry about it. That's
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
the key.
And there are ways to cheat it as well.
Yeah.
Like you could hold a CD up,
Yeah.
just slightly
And
out
you
of
can stick
frame
a
and-
flashlight right on the edge of the lens.
and you'll get a similar effect. It doesn't look as good, but
And the
for a
issue-
shorter film, no one would really notice.
And I think the issue with that is people like anamorphic lenses because of the lens flare. But when they first started shooting with anamorphic lenses, they were annoyed by the lens flare. They were like, crap, we want to get lenses that don't have, lens flares. And so it's just it's a time thing. But in the end, I would say, what's the flare for? Does the lens flare help move the story forward? In our case with Men in Boots, yeah, the lens flare is going to help us a little bit to create some roughness. But I don't want it for everybody because that's not what the movie needs.
Yeah.
I think going to Drew's comment about is equipment important? As you said, yeah, it is important. The one thing I would say that we found from better equipment is it just helps you to do your job faster and a little easier. When we switched lenses, the lenses that we bought from Prime Circle, all the lenses have the same bokeh. So when you switch from lens to lens, you don't notice as much difference you don't notice any difference color-wise, you don't notice any difference bokeh-wise. They're matched. And so it allows color correction a bit easier. It allows us to not have to worry as much about the aperture settings and things like that in crossing them over. Is that worth the money? For us, yeah, because it saves us a lot of time. For some of you guys who aren't necessarily restricted as much by time, that may not be worth it.
Yeah.
So yeah, any final thoughts on that one?
No.
Cool.
No, that's good.
Okay, Chelsea Yurkowitz. Sorry, Chelsea. I think I might have pronounced your last name wrong. Chelsea is acting as Girl in Navigator. She asks, what initially gave us the idea to use Ibibio as the language structure for the primitives?
So I don't remember exactly what was going on. I think Weston and I were playing video games really late at night, and I was like, I think it would be cool if it was a language that was a real language. We could use an actual language structure, but it's something that no one really, that's not really been on film before. Something that people wouldn't be like, oh, I recognize that. That's French or whatever.
Yeah.
I wanted it to be something a little more unusual that still had a normal reality feel to it.
Yeah, so actually, if I recall, we were walking home from somewhere. We were on the street walking, and I was talking to you about, how do we write a foreign language? And I was coming up with these ideas of, oh, let's do this, but reverse and stuff like that. And so I had this idea of, writing a language, I was really nervous about it. And I was like, how can we pull that off? And that's when you had announced, you said, why don't we just use a language, as you just said, use a language that's not extremely well known to the populace. And that we could kind of change pronunciation so that it sounded even more different.
Yeah.
But then the structure is already there.
Yeah.
And then a really good friend of ours who also acts in a number of our projects, Eni, his mom was in town and she speaks Ibibio fluently. She's from Nigeria in an area where they speak Ibibio. And so she needed help with the resume, so we just made a little trade. I was like, I'll help you with your resume. And
can you translate some lines for us?
This into Ibibio. And then we even had her do a reading just to get an idea of pronunciation, even though we've drifted from that pronunciation on purpose. But yeah, that's kind of where it came from.
Yeah.
And I think it's awesome because when you look at movies like Avatar, they wrote that whole language. You had a linguist guy who spent months writing the whole thing.
And it was cool.
It was cool.
That was cool.
But it costs a lot of money and takes a lot of time, and it's hard unless that guy studies languages all the time. How do you make it sound real?
You're pro,
Yeah. So you can cut that corner, so to speak, with using a real language. Now, a lot of in Star Wars, they did a lot of that.
Yeah.
Like the languages they were speaking there, they took real languages and did exactly what we did, tweaked them a little bit.
Well, the song for the Ewoks, right? They had recorded, they found this woman who wouldn't speak and gave her a beer or something.
Whiskey. Grandma whiskey.
And then
that's a great little scene.
She drank it and started, singing this
started
song.
Singing.
And they recorded her and laid her on top of each other and made the Ewok song.
Yeah.
So
I'll have to rewatch that Ewok scene.
Okay, so Curtis asks us, how much is planned out and how much is flying by the seat of your pants? Curtis, are you asking about this or the movie?
Because we're just flying right here.
I don't know, not much for Navigator. Not much is just flying.
It's a lot of
every
planning.
time you get to set, what happens is something goes wrong, and then you find yourself
Improvising.
Improvising, yeah. The last shoot day we did, that's exactly what happened. We had everything planned out perfectly, down to the minute of our schedule.
Down to the sandwiches.
Yeah. And we got out there, hauled all the stuff 30 feet onto the sand, or the salt, and just realized that there was 10 million footsteps just everywhere. And so then I remember just not wanting to bring it up because I was like, oh, this is going to be such a pain, because then we ended up having to move everything. We had to walk around so we didn't make more footsteps.
Probably about 200 yards.
Yeah. And just hauled it out there, and just nothing worked that
Right.
Not a single shot that we shot that day is going to make it into the final cut. And so, I mean, we try not to, but it definitely happens.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, for myself as a director, my goal is to come on set with a plan and have prepared it to where we have prepared ourselves for success. on the actor side, on the shooting side, so we're not trying to do things that are out of our league. But then it's that same element of know enough of it to where if something goes wrong, we can quickly say, okay, we can't get this shot. What's the next shot that we can get? What lighting is it? So it's not flying by the seat of your pants. It's being able to adapt.
Yeah, like just recently I was watching on the there's an Alien Day celebration, 426.
For Alien Covenant?
Yeah, for Alien Covenant.
Not
and
like
the,
Aliens.
No,
but
like, yeah,
movie.
for the movie, Ridley Scott's coming film, Alien Covenant. And the actors were just sitting together. The actress that plays Daniels, I can't remember her name for the life of me, because I'm terrible with human names.
But alien names.
Alien names,
right.
fine.
Robot names, planet
yeah,
names.
I can name all that stuff. Like, if it's fictional, I know it.
Well, what's the planet that Alien was on?
That took place in LV-426.
Yeah, see.
So that come on, it's nothing.
Continue.
Anyway, so she was describing a moment where like they were filming a shot of her in a spacesuit, and she was supposed to be like in space, and this wire on her suit kept like moving into her face, and Ridley eventually was just like, just get me some tape and we'll just tape the effer, and he just like taped it real fast, and they got the scene and it worked. They kept having to try this a costumer come in to fix it, and it kept like popping off, so he just taped it, to get the scene done, because it wasn't worth the time that was needed to make it work as a piece. It was just for a quick moment, so you could just tape it and get it out of the way, and it was fine. And you'll never see that in the film. There's little things like that happen all the time.
Yeah.
You may notice it, but it won't break immersion.
Yeah, and so we carry a production bag with us on set, and we've learned to do that where we have tools for the camera equipment. We have, cloths to clean it. We have extra things that we might not be needing, but we've learned to bring it just in case, something goes wrong and you gotta, fix it. And a lot of times it's just learning to keep going. With Interstellar, they were shooting that scene in the water planet, and Anne Hathaway's suit was leaking.
Yeah.
And so, she's going to freeze to death, and she was on the onsets of getting hypothermia. But you have to be able to think, is it beneficial to take her out now, or do we just shoot it and get it done? And, they were like, well, she's frozen. We're still 2 hours away from any place, so it's not going to help us pull her out anyways.
Finish it.
And then she's going to have more fear to come back and shoot it later, right? Which she'll have, shell shock. And so it was their decision, just shoot it now. They started pouring like a hose with warm water down her shirt to try to, heat her up, and you just got to go with it and be prepared to keep moving. So, yeah.
So that's one thing Weston's good at is putting the actors in danger.
It makes the
or hypothermia.
Fear,
He knows about hypothermia.
It makes the fear of the moment more real.
Yeah, when you don't have...
that's method right there. You don't even have to act. You just be afraid to die.
All right, that was great, but let's take one more.
Within reason, hopefully.
Call the police.
Andrew has very personal experiences. Before he was our writer.
Yeah, I was in Passage.
If you watch Passage,
I'm the one who looked like he was actually dying.
Because
you see me very briefly.
So
I had just spent like 2 years in Las Vegas, spending most of my time outside doing physical work, and it was extremely hot. And that was like the first winter I was experiencing again, and it was like sub-zero temperatures, and he was like, you can't wear any clothes.
Because
you got to be out there basically in a loincloth, and we're all getting snowed on, and that was hard.
Yeah, that was crazy. So go watch Passage and see if you can spot Andrew hiding in the right side of the screen.
Yeah.
You'll see him. Okay, so Barack A asks how to find ideas for a short film you're shooting and acting in.
All right, well, first off, thank you for serving our country. Is it the same one?
I think Barack A, not Barack O.
Okay.
But either way, thanks for serving our country.
Sorry, what was the question?
How do you come up with ideas, basically?
Oh.
Yeah,
Like
ideas
short
for...
films, or?
He says, how do you come up with ideas for a short film you're shooting and acting in? I think just in general, it's kind of, how do you come up with ideas? How do you come up with
How do I come up with ideas? So this is a me question. Finally, my time has arrived. That was a Zoidberg. That's not my best. I'm a little phlegmy right now. For me, like I said earlier, it's just, you just let your imagination roam free. That may not be easy for everyone. Like, I wasn't really aware until recently that there are some people who cannot imagine. Like, that was such a bizarre idea to me. I imagine all the time. I'm just like, I see something and I'm like, what would it be like if it was like this? And I just go into my mind with it. and imagine the whole scenario of how it would occur with like lighting and everything. I populate it naturally in my mind. And if you don't have that ability, you can expand on it. Just start with something, get a picture of what you're wanting to think about. You know, like, oh, I think it would be fun to tell a story about space or about Western times. So get a picture of something, you know, like a Western scene, and just look at it. Take time to imagine it in your mind. Close your eyes and recall the image. What does it look like? Name everything that's in that image, and you'll grow your imagination from there. Eventually, you'll be able to make it into a moving picture. But the real piece of it is just pick something. It doesn't matter what it is. Pick something and think about it, and just where did it start? What happened before that? Where does it go to? And what happens after the story is over? Just bump something over here.
And don't have a preset of where am I going. Let it write itself.
Yeah, let it tell itself. You can have a basic idea, but if the idea starts to fluctuate from that, it's okay to let it, because you're going to wind up with something even cooler most of the time. And if that doesn't work, keep going. You have to write a lot of stories before you get to the good ones.
Yeah.
If you've never written a story, you've got to get the crap out first. You've got to. It's the only way around it.
And that's where you can really shoot yourself down, as if you're overthinking. That's the problem I have, is I have this desire to write and to create, and I tend to overthink a lot of things. So I'll be on that first paragraph and just doing the first paragraph over and over again, because it's not good enough when you just really got to let it flow and just not care it, you can't care it as much.
Yeah.
Just recently, because I'm working on a novel right now, and just recently I reached a point where I was having trouble moving on. I was like, what am I missing here? And as I thought about it, I realized that the last 5,000 words I had written took me away from the natural course of how the story was supposed to go, because I was trying to make it go a different way. I was like, I want it to go this way. Then I realized, wait a minute, the characters would have behaved differently. So I traced it back, and it was 5,000 words before. I had to remove that 5,000 words. I had to get rid of it. And that's okay. It's perfectly fine to do that. And that's going to happen when you're writing a story. That happened with Navigator. There were parts where we'd get somewhere and be like, wait a minute, take all that out. Let's start right here again.
Yeah.
Now we're doing better.
Yeah,
and you know,
let
it can be hard at the time. It can be like, but I worked so hard on this piece, and it has good writing in it, but it's not going to work for telling this story.
Yeah.
And that helps having other people to edit it for you. I don't know, because it's your baby, so you love it, and you can't just take the axe to it. But having someone else who
you trust, I think, is important.
Who's a third party that you have similar tastes and likes, they can come in and tell you what is good and what isn't.
Yeah, and you know, one thing that immediately comes to my mind is, for myself, I realize that I'm not a writer. And I always had this vision of, I would love to write and direct my own movies. And I remember in high school, I remember thinking, how could I ever let someone else write my movies? And I just couldn't get over this thought until I started realizing, wow, I'm not a good writer. I'm not good at...
I did that.
I'm not good at letting stories, take them, live themselves. I try to force them. And so I think that's also really important of, be aware that you may not be a writer. Or you may not be a cinematographer, or you may not be a director, but also be aware that in film production there are thousands of jobs that you can specialize in. There's people who specialize just in Foley, people who specialize, just in focus pulling, and they're geniuses at that. And so realize that, it's all grandioso to be the director or to be the writer, but it may not be your thing, and be willing to let that go if that's not your thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have another question from Jakob, again, from Germany. So how would you say Jacob in German?
Jakob.
Jakob. Okay, Jakob. He says, any tips for getting into, quote-unquote, the film business?
Ooh.
I don't know.
That's what I would say.
I don't know if you could say we're in the quote-unquote film business. I mean, we're trying, but a lot of it's just going for it,
Yeah.
That's really what I'd say is I don't consider ourselves in the film business because one thing that we found as we've tried to get into it, at least within our local network, is it's very closed. They're very tight-knit, and a lot of times, unless you know someone, unless you're the son of someone, it's hard to get in.
But even then, it's hard.
Yeah, and even then. And so what we've, at least for us, this is why we're doing Navigator the way that we're doing it, is this is our back door to it. Instead of getting into the film business where someone will hire us and pay us big money to make movies and do our dream, we instead created a business. And that business helped us make money to help us live a little bit of our dream, but prepare us to, buy the equipment and get the skills necessary in order to then live our own dream. And that's kind of the goal of, as we grow Navigator, as we release it chapter by chapter and build an audience, all of a sudden the film business starts coming to us.
Yeah.
Because they say, wow, this is an awesome movie, or, Drew, you're a genius at cinematography, or Andrew or Jacob, you guys are geniuses at writing. I want you to write my next movie. And then all of a sudden we're in the film business because we took the back door. So.
Yeah, if you make a great product, people will come to you. You don't have to know somebody. You don't have to get the piece of paper that says you're qualified to do this. Just get good at it. Get good at it, do your job well, and provide an excellent product, and people will come to you to get it.
Yeah, and be an ever learner. I really think that's the biggest thing. Is I find when I built the crew of COMV, and everybody kind of helped pull in different people, the biggest thing was humble people who were just fun to be around, and that humility allowed all of us to be able to keep looking at ourselves and saying, man, this shot could have been so much better, or let's work on this a bit more, and then we were able to put the effort into that and become professionals. How many of us have education in film production?
Me.
Kyle Warner.
Kyle.
Our BTS editor, he's the only one who actually studied film production. And then Levi Connor studied
music, right?
Music. And you'd have to hear his thoughts on it about, spending the money that he spent to study it. And really in the end, I think schooling is great for getting connections. And I would say, at least we've realized that if we were to go to school now, it would be really beneficial because we know what we're bad at. And so I'd say for any of those of you who have the privilege or the finances to be able to go to like a film school or something, make your mistakes before you get there. So that way you can go to school and say, oh wow, I'm horrible at lighting. And then you'll know, wow, this lighting class is going to blow my mind. It's going to be amazing. Versus when we go there and we don't really know what we're bad at, we just kind of float through it all.
You see, that's what made Emperor Palpatine so formidable, because he knew his weakness. He knew what made him weak. That's what made him so strong, because he knew what to avoid, because he knew what he was weak in.
Yeah. Okay, so we have another question again from Jacob, sorry.
Because it is German, right?
Yeah, I keep putting too
so
hard.
I believe it should be Jakob.
Putting a little too much on the J. He says, what do you consider good writing?
Oh man, that's a big question, because it's kind of hard to if
it's subjective.
Yeah, it's kind of a subjective thing. There's a variety of good writing, and there's a variety of bad writing, I suppose. But mostly it comes down to the feel of it. Is it stale? Is it overdoing it?
Is it entertaining?
Yeah. Does it fulfill its purpose? Is the real question. What are you trying to write it for? What are you saying that for? Why does this line exist?
Yeah.
Do you need it? And if not, trim it. Get it out of there. I mean, you don't need to clog the internet. The internet's like a series of tubes, okay? And you don't want to clog the tubes.
And a lot of the tubes are
That's an old meme, sir, but it checks out.
One thing that comes to my mind is kind of in the music area, and Drew can probably back me up more on this, we've worked with a lot of people who are good singers, but they'll never make it anywhere because they're just good singers, right? And when you look at people like, what's his name, Sting, like some of those, unique singers where, they're good, but more than anything, they're unique. And so I'd say, to me, that's kind of what writing is about, is there's not really a good or bad. There's grammatically good writing, but I would, dare to say that probably most of the best screenwriters probably aren't grammatically correct in the way that they put stuff all the time.
Yeah, but it's the feel that you're providing. What are you trying to tell them with the story? Why are you telling it? If it's just to talk about how, these two people had, crazy vampire love and then a werewolf showed up, that's cool and all, and you're going to reach some people, and that's
I don't know
fine.
What he's talking about,
you're going to reach people, because objectively you could say that is good because it reached a large audience. But is that going to be something that fundamentally changes the course of human history?
Stay with people?
Does it become something that is around forever? Is it a King Arthur story? Is it a Star Wars? You know, is it something like that where it just fundamentally changes the genre? You're not going to hit that every time, and that shouldn't be the goal. The things that change the genre, they never planned on doing that. You know, when Dan O'Bannon and Ridley Scott got together, and you know, they were like, oh, let's bring in an artist, you know, let's bring in this crazy Swedish guy who likes making crazy biomechanical stuff, and we'll have him make the creature. You know, they weren't expecting to make
Or the Millennium Falcon.
Yeah, these people were not expecting to make something that would fundamentally change science fiction. You know, they weren't like, oh, the Millennium Falcon is going to be so amazing that anyone who sees it anywhere will immediately know that it's the Millennium Falcon. They weren't planning on that.
They just thought
It
it looked
happened because
Isn't
they
it a burger?
kind of
I'm pretty sure it was based on like a burger.
with a bite out of it. That's what I always imagined as a kid.
I think
You
they
take
were
a bite
saying,
out of your
like-
burger and you're like, it's the Millennium Falcon.
They thought it was interesting, the stick. If I recall, they were saying, like, you know, cockpits are always in the middle. What if we stuck it off to the side?
Yeah, what if it was
That
a little
like
off
the
to the
simple
side?
concept.
Yeah, but you know, like that wasn't the plan. It wasn't like we're gonna make the most iconic thing ever. With James Cameron, he wasn't like, I'm gonna make the most iconic Marine ever, so much so that every video game, movie, or book from now on is going to emulate Hudson from Aliens all the time. He wasn't planning on doing that. He just made a cool character. You know, he's like, let's just put in a really cool character. They just did their best, and that's what makes for good writing. Is just give your best, and then whenever it comes out, it'll be good on its own.
Yeah.
For me, you have to find a balance between what you want and then what the audience is gonna want. Because you don't want too much of either. If you are only doing what the audience wants, you're gonna come up with a generic piece of crap. If you're only doing what you want, no one else likes it, then it's probably even worse.
Yeah. Too artsy. Nobody will get it.
If you're the only one that likes it, then it is bad. It is a piece of crap.
Yeah.
If you can find somewhere in between so that you're happy making it, and then people are also going to enjoy it, I think that's probably going to be pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, you know, kind of in the end, my thought with that, you know, a little bit going back to Barack's question about, you know, writing and acting, is finding your place in it, finding what you're actually good at. You know, for myself, I never will act in one of my films. One, probably it's because I'm a horrible actor, but two, I just find that it's really difficult, and most of the people who I know who try to act and direct, it's hard for them to separate it and figure out, you know, what that balance is. So I'd say, you know, find a way to focus on, discover what you're good at, and find a way to focus on that. And then find other people who can fill in the other parts that you're not good at, and you'll make wonderful stories. You know, don't be a one-man band. You know, that works for commercial stuff, but I've never seen a feature film that's been done by one person. I've seen some people claim, you know, that, oh, I wrote everything, but really in the end, they had a whole bunch of people helping them. They're just prideful. So yeah, well guys, that's the end of it. Any final comments that you guys want to offer before we close it out?
Well, this has been really cool. No more questions at all?
I want to get off
That's
this
cool.
seat.
Yeah, Apple boxes. They are not necessarily...
Oh, that's what these are. Oh, you mean like actual fruit, right? Or are these computers?
No, they're fruit.
Okay, so
Yeah, yeah.
fruit boxes.
So just to kind of finish it off with the story idea, good writing, what would you define? Good writing forces people to do what? Or what does it invite people to do?
Good writing invites you to think. Like, if you're going to write a story out, and what I would consider to be something that's really good, that endures, it makes you think about what went into it. You know, like, there's like, what happened before, and what happened after. You know, and you can get little pieces of that throughout the story, but you never get the whole thing. And it leads you to just watch it again, or read it again, to pick up on those little pieces, to come up with your own little theories. Even if you don't do that, if the story has the potential to cause someone to do that, then I feel that that's a good writing, because it'll endure.
For me, it's how much am I getting sucked into this. Film should be immersive. It should make me experience it in some way, through the way I feel or just how it looks sometimes, you know. That for me is a good story, if I forget that I'm even watching a movie.
Yeah. That's when I can't sit there and pick out, oh, you know, that's out of focus, or oh, look at that camera movement. When that stuff goes out of my mind, it's like, oh wow, what's going on in this story? Jacob Connor, who actually just sent me a text, he's helping us with some of the behind the scenes stuff. He said for him, it's forcing emotions on people, to where it's like it's emotion that, you know, you don't want to feel that way, but you're forced to feel that way because you're so involved in it. It's great writing. And in the end, you know, we'll talk about cameras and equipment all day long, and that's, you know, the big thing right now in the film world. But it's always the story. I'd say it's the planning, behind the story, but it's the story itself that makes it come to life. So guys, good luck with getting out there on your journeys. Thanks for joining us on our journey as we continue to make Navigator. Stay tuned every week on Thursday as we come out with new behind the scenes of making our first feature film as we pull it together and bring it to life. And we'll be on this journey for the next few years. So.
Yeah. All right. I filmed something earlier today because like I've been putting it off forever, and I was like, it's fast running out, so I've got to do it now. So that should hopefully be up by the end of the week.
Yeah.
So, it's called Creative Crush, and it's just where I go through and like give my own ideas on what makes good stories, what makes good questions, things like that you can just really pull you in to the story, and what makes bad ones too. So I'll go over a lot of cool things in that with commercials.
Yeah, we'll actually
ads,
put a link in this video when it goes live, because there's a lot of questions that's about writing, and Andrew has his own channel that he's starting up that's
I'm starting
all
it
about
now
creativity.
for you people.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to me. You make me feel so big when in reality I'm so small.
Okay, love you guys. Have a good one. Thanks for those of you guys who woke up in the middle of the night to watch us. Hopefully you can get some rest. And
we
enjoy your
can
Friday.
we can set this up to play lullabies after so that you can go back to sleep.
I can sing lullabies. My singing is as good as my writing. Bye, guys.
Bye. You guys are great.
Are we cut?
Is it still going? I feel like that Real Fake Doors commercial right now, where it's just like, it's great, and then it just goes home and makes a sandwich and stops back out, and he's like, the commercial's still going. Are we still going? Real Fake Doors.